Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we're going to have a great discussion today because we're going to be talking about a gentleman who is an entrepreneur, and an entrepreneur of something that's a little bit different than what we are expecting. But he's had such a journey getting there, and his product is very unique and very interesting. And so please join me in welcoming Eric Robichaud to our program today. Welcome, Eric. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for having me today.
Great. Okay, I'm going to give a little disclaimer because of what we're talking about. We're going to be talking about medicinal herbs, which primarily we're going to be talking about cannabis. Don't panic, everybody. Cannabis is legal. What we're talking about at least is, but we are only talking to people who are 18 and older. This is an adult product. We're not talking about anything that is for youngsters, and we're also not giving specific medical advice. So with that disclaimer said, I'm going to go ahead and read Eric's bio. So Eric Robichaud is a 30-year veteran of the tech industry and a bit of a serial entrepreneur, having built and sold 3 businesses to date. He's now working to build his newest venture, but this time took a radical departure into the greater cannabis industry, but with a twist, and that's what we're going to learn about. He's a father of 2, and in his spare time enjoys photography, playing the guitar, and ice hockey. And I guess maybe I should tell you that, I'm a Colorado Avalanche fan, and woohoo, yay, Avs.
I won't hold it against you.
I know.
We sent you Ray Bork. I'm from Boston, so I'm a Bruins fan.
Yep. See, I knew that when you say ice hockey and you're in Boston, yeah, you're a fan. So Eric, as I mentioned, you have had a very roundabout way to get to where you are today. And I always love hearing from my guests about how they discovered that for what they're doing right now, it's their passion in life. So tell us a little bit more.
Sure, absolutely. So, when I look back at the whole journey, it kind of reminds me of when I was a kid and I would go to the beach with the family. Now, I was born and raised in Rhode Island, so we'd go to the beach fairly regularly. Maybe folks in Montana can't identify, but we would go to the beach fairly regularly. And one phenomenon that I noticed as a kid is I'd go down into the water, straight down into the water with my cousins. I had a big family, lots of cousins, and we'd all play. We'd have a ball and we'd be jumping around on the waves and playing. And we'd do that for about a half an hour. And then you look up and it's a completely foreign, different look. And you're like, wait a minute, what? And then when you look, like, where's the family? Where's the blanket? And then you look and it's all the way over there.
Oh,
and you didn't realize that every time you jump up, the current carries you a little bit, and then you jump and it's just carrying you, and you're just heads down and you look up and you realize how far you've drifted. That's my career. My career, that from where I started to where I am now, it's been all just incremental little steps. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but how it took me from a very technical, hardcore software engineer to being in the green rush, the cannabis industry now. And how did that happen? So as I mentioned, I started off I went to Rensselaer Polytech, RPI, an engineering school. We were the engineers in upstate Albany. My first job out of school was at CVS Pharmacy at the headquarters. And my time there, I basically designed and implemented their whole centralized credit card processing system that still runs today. I built a scalable system that is infinitely scalable, and it just runs. And I have friends now, some 30 years later, who still work there and tell me, it just still keeps running. It's just running. Doing tremendously more volume, but we just keep scaling it up. So I had, at one point I left and I started my own business. And actually that's overly simplified. I started the business while I was at CVS with full disclosure to CVS. It was a evenings, weekend side thing. And then when it got to a certain point where I needed to decide, is this a hobby or am I going to go for it?
Right.
I decided to go for it.
Nice.
And I left CVS, and that was I started the business in 1990. I left CVS in 1993, July of 93. So about probably was that 29 years ago. And what I did, my first business I ran that for about 18 years.
Wow.
And we developed consumer software. So we did games and screensavers. We did a lot of CD-ROMs, like children's interactive movie books. And that's when in 93 timeframe, I met Vincent Bettetti. And that'll come up again. Vincent was out in California, and I was in Rhode Island. And his business and his company and my company, we formed a joint partnership. He was out in the LA area, and he got licenses to movies and television. He was dealing with all the studios. And then I had the development team, and we would build the products. So we did children's interactive storybooks, the Batman and Robin, Little Rascals, Free Willy.
Very cool.
All these really movie titles. And for me, it was about the software engineering of building these interactive multimedia, all the code to make these things work, and we did hundreds of titles. I ran that business for about 18 years. And then the first little step over was as we were starting to become known, we were sort of we found a little niche and we owned it. The screensaver market back in the early 90s. We were sort of like the big fish in a little pond. I'd say 98% of the screensavers on the market came out of our office.
Wow.
Not all of them, but most of them. And they were private labeled, white labeled, other people's names on them, but they came out of our office. And we did the Terminator 2 screensaver. We did Star Trek. We did all kinds of stuff. I Love Lucy, Saturday Night Live, Twilight Zone. We did
Probably people are still using those.
Well, I don't know. Computers have come a long way.
Yeah, true.
But it is funny that 30 years later, I do have people that find me. Like, I found you. They hunt me down and say, I lost my computer died or whatever.
I know. I need my Lucy.
Yeah. Do you still have this or that or the other? And I've actually hunted down from the old archives and sent them the files. I said, I don't know if it'll still work, but here you go. So we became known as the screensaver guys. We actually built that into our logo. We're like, we're the screensaver guys. And so I had the Fortune 100 were coming to me. I ended up they would come to me and say, hey, we saw, whatever. We saw this product out in the stores. We want Bacardi. We want to reach this, a younger demographic. We want to do some Bacardi screensavers, Mobile Oil, Folgers. We want to do a CD-ROM giveaway. So can you do something for us? And basically it was like, well,
sure.
I guess if you pay me enough, right? And so what happened was that was the first step where we started doing custom work. And that sort of started to grow on its own. And I built an interactive agency, a digital agency. Okay. So now it was all one physical company, but it was a separate brand run as a digital agency. And we did projects for the New York Knicks, the San Diego Chargers, Folgers Coffee, American Express, Walmart, and so forth and on and on and on. And then at one point, we got to a spot where I had the opportunity to sell the core business. And I did. I sold the business. We were kind of peaking. Screensavers were peaking. And I had a business, another company that we were working with wanted to acquire my company and get all that intellectual property. They did not want the services business. Like, that's not what we do. We just want all your code, your base. We want your IP, basically. So that was about 95% of the business. So I sold that. Took the other little piece, the agency piece, and ran with that for the next maybe 12 years or so. So I started building this boutique agency. And so now that's all custom work. And it's not really like hardcore software engineering anymore. It turned into more of marketing, creative design with the software and the technology, doing a lot of web-based stuff. And we moved from software products as a tangible end consumer product to more like corporate websites and database-driven stuff. And marketing and logos and branding and the website and everything goes together, and became a digital or an interactive agency. And then, some number of years later, one of my large clients my larger clients at the time was at that time the largest third-party seller on Amazon. They had $1 million days. Like, oh, we sold $1 million today.
Right. Today.
Today, yeah. Oh, how quaint, So they came to me, and this was back, we're talking, 15 years ago or so. And the Amazon, like at that point, you could sell on their platform, but the reports were awful. They're like they've come a long way now, but back then they had nothing really to support those vendors. And he would come to me and say, I need help. I need you to build, and I can't even. I don't know what my inventory is because you ship your stuff to Amazon. He's like, I can't control.
Right.
I don't know what my inventory is. They didn't.
So then we run out and people scream
and all the trying to manage all this stuff. And I'm like, and I'd go on the Amazon. I'm like, well, they have an inventory. No. He's like, look, I can't explain it to you. You really got to just experience it. He goes, why don't you go set up an Amazon seller company? I'll help you set it up and actually start selling and, buy some product, resell some product, do all this stuff and create an account, and you'll get a feel for it. And then you'll understand what I'm talking about. And I remember looking, I'm going like, that's a pretty big ask. Like, go start a lot of time
ask.
It's a lot of time investment. I got to buy product and resell product. It's a lot of, I got to touch inventory. I got to start ordering stuff. I'm like, you want me to run a whole nother business, basically. I mean, that's kind of a big ask. But when I look back, we were strong six figures with him. So I'm like, he is my biggest client. We're doing several hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And I'm like, all right, well, all right, let's do it, So we did. And we launched a business. And at first we were selling slingshot rubber chickens. We were selling rubber cockroaches. We're all toys and novelties. We were cotton candy machines. We had pencils with like cosmic pencils with like stars and the glow in the dark and all this stuff. Just toys and novelties and goofy stuff. And we were doing our thing, and I'm learning, and I'm starting to get how many cosmic pencils we have. I can't figure it out. Like, I get it. I get what his problem is, right? So we were running this. But now if I'm going to do this, I don't want to just lose money, right? So I had one of the guys that in my office, a marketing guy in our office, was on this project. And part of his job was to, just reorder and all the stuff and find products that we could sell and make some money with. I don't want to lose money in this process, So, and we had a matrix of about 7 things that we would look for in a product for Amazon. Okay. We want them small and like a pen. We want them small and lightweight.
Right.
So
shipping costs are low.
Shipping costs are low. Storage of the inventory is low. We wanted, good margins, high demand, so we had like 7 criteria of what we would look for in a product. And usually a product would tick 4, maybe 5 of those boxes. We wanted something like at least 4, maybe 5 of those boxes, And he came to me one day and he says, I found the unicorn product. I'm like, what? It ticks all 7 boxes. And I'm like, really? What is it? Yeah. Now I should put into context that, he was young. He was about 24 at the time.
One of those millennials.
Yes, he was a millennial, clean cut, captain of his track team at Syracuse University and blah, 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 and everything else. And, very clean cut. And he comes to me and I go, oh yeah, wow, that sounds great. What is it? And he goes, I'm like, what? He goes, what is it? I'm like, look at me and speak up. I don't
tell me what it is, dude.
So then he looks at me, makes eye contact and says, it's a weed pipe. I said,
what's it?
Okay, I don't have a problem with that. Tell me about it. Really? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I've smoked. And he's like, you do? I'm like, insomnia. That's a whole other thing. But yes. Let's talk about it. I can talk about my personal journey with cannabis, but I said, yeah, all right. Tell me about it. He's like, I had no idea. Cause I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm not flaunting it, tell me about this. So he told me about it, sold me on it. Said, yeah, let's do it. It turned into our best seller and it started taking off. And then he comes to me, whatever weeks later and says, hey, we're out of slingshot rubber chicken. Should I buy, am I good to buy more? And I'm like, no, wait a minute. For every $1 we spend on rubber chickens, we're making $1.50. For every $1 we spend on the pipe, we're making 10, whatever, 4, I'm like, no, it was just orders of magnitude difference, right? So I said, no, let's do more of that. It's like, oh, okay. So he went out sourcing and found more other different pipes and things. And what happened was over the course of about 6 months later, you look back and we've got, a dozen SKUs that we're selling, and they're all smoking accessories. They're all like different types of pipes and rolling trays and grinders and things like that. And at that point, it started to catch my attention. I said, okay, wait a second, what's going on here?
Right.
And so we looked a little closer, and then that's when I actually started, we kind of tripped into it. But then I started analyzing the market, and then I started seeing where there are gaps in the market and where there's opportunities and things we could do. And we are a digital agency. I've always said, if you're a hammer, then every problem looks like a nail, right?
Right.
And we're a digital agency. So what do? We build brands, right? So I'm like, let's build a brand around this. So that's where Green Goddess came from. So we built the Green Goddess. And Green Goddess is, most people don't realize, they're like, who's the goddess? They're looking for some female here or something. But Green Goddess is a euphemism for weed, like weed, ganja, herb.
Oh, okay. I'm naive. I'll just put it out there.
I had a buddy of mine who that was his keyword, especially before legalization. My buddy would be like, hey, it's time to go worship the Green Goddess. So years later, when I started the company, I'm like, Green Goddess Supply. Yes. And it took off. And I realized at that point that having this side business, that this was a product oriented business. And this was fun and interesting and reminded me of what I did for the first 20 years when I had product, and it was software, but it was product. And now I'm in this services business. And I was after about 12 years, I was done. I was just burnt. I was burnt out. And so then it was like, all right, there was some, then that's when I mentioned Vincent Battetti back in 93. We started doing screensavers and games and stuff. He calls me up one day and says, hey, I saw you posting on Facebook about Green Goddess, with the weed pipes and stuff. I was like, oh yeah. He goes, do you know those guys?
And you went, kinda.
I'm like, yeah, I do. Yeah,
I am those guys.
No, well, I didn't even go there. I kind of stretched him out a little bit, but he's like, yeah, really? Like, how well?
They're good dudes.
How well do you know him? I'm like, really well. Yeah.
Have dinner with them on occasion.
You think you could introduce me? I'm sure I could make that happen. And he's like,
poor
really?
Yeah.
So then, it was just kind of funny on a phone call. And it turns out he invented a home grow cabinet. And wanted to bring it to market and was looking for a brand to partner with. And then he was looking at Green Goddess as an opportunity. So he called me up, and I'm like, yeah. So what we found out was that I've been smoking for insomnia was my reason why I started smoking. So I was in the midnight toker for insomnia, to go to sleep at night. And he had been growing.
Now we all have that song in our head.
There you go. Yeah, you're welcome. And he, going back to the 70s, he actually, and I didn't realize this at the time, that he actually originally went to school for botany and studied, plant morphology and all this stuff. And he had been growing since the 70s. He did a lot of consulting in California grows, large grows when they have pest problems and different things. And, but legalization and all that stuff, like you didn't talk about that.
Right. And cannabis is used for other things. I mean, that's and hemp, that whole family of things, it's been around for a bazillion years.
Absolutely. And it's actually one of the oldest, goes back fossil records, I believe 39 million years on that plant. And I don't think, with it produces cannabinoids, and we have an endocannabinoid system. I don't think it's a fluke that we evolved with an endocannabinoid system. I don't think it's a fluke. But what happened, this all came to a head, and realized that he's been in that, like we were both had a foot in this for years, but we didn't talk about it. We were just
because you're not supposed to.
Right. It's just, so that was the point where we decided to, I saw the brilliance of the Armoire, and what he was doing and why he was doing it. And we decided, let's do this. Let's take this to market. And then now, but this is not a little side. This is a whole other thing now. So that's when I sold my agency, and we jumped in full time on Green Goddess Supply. Right.
I love it. And it was interesting looking at your website. You're not a dealer. You're not a dispensary. That's not what you're doing. You're selling products that pertain to it. Right. And I was sharing, it was funny. I watched the video about the Armoire, and And you can grow other things in there, folks. It really is for medicinal herbs, which we all deal with very often. I mean, I just did a quick Google and it's chamomile, it's echinacea, it's garlic. It's all of these things that we spend money and go buy. And holy schmoly, we could buy it or we could be growing ourselves. But it is this beautiful piece of furniture. It did have one drawback that you have to maintain it a little bit more than what I can do. I kill every plant I get near, including fake ones. But yeah,
I used to say the same thing though. I'd kill a cactus and I can handle watering it once a day.
You see, I couldn't. I mean, I finally had to. I grow herbs. I grow herbs for food herbs, and I finally put them outside because it rained on them enough that it kept them alive. But yeah, I mean, these are things that we have around us all the time, and we've stopped making faces at those, but it's still kind of a little bit weird when we're dealing with it from a medical perspective.
Right. Because, and I will tell you that back in the day, I didn't smoke until I was into my 30s, and it was for insomnia.
Right.
And the way that happened was that I grew up in the, post Nixon war on drugs era. This is your brain.
Oh, yes. Betty Ford.
Betty Ford and all that.
Just say no.
Just say no. And
she was scary.
Yeah, and it was, and I grew up in that, so I didn't smoke. I'm also, it kills brain cells, this, that, all the fake, disinformation, that even people in Nixon's administration now, like Haldeman and stuff, will do TED Talks and say, yeah, we knew we were lying when we were saying it. So I grew up in that, and I didn't start smoking until I was in my 30s, but I had terrible insomnia. I couldn't sleep. Very common problem, I've learned. Super common. And so
especially with high achievers.
Yeah, and it was enough that I went to, I couldn't shut my brain off at night, and always one more thing. And what about this? What about that? And it was enough of a problem that I went to see my doctor about it. He prescribed me, I forget which one was first, but I did both Lunesta and Ambien. Couldn't do either one of them. The side effects were awful. Kind of one of those, like, the good news is we cured the disease. The bad news is we killed the patient in the process.
Right. We gave you something else.
I mean, that's no good, So it was just the side effects were worse than the initial problem. I just couldn't do it. Like, my head felt like it was a balloon floating, and I couldn't drive. I was like, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. And so I went off, and it just so happened that I was at I was at a party. There was a party at my house. We had a 4th of July party, and at the end of the evening, once everybody was kind of like gone, and there was just the last couple of people left, one of my friends sparked up a joint, was passing it around, and I was like, nah, I'm all good. He goes, well, this will help you sleep. I was like, oh, really? All right, what the heck, And I woke up like 4 hours later. So I was like, whoa,
the party'd gone on without you.
They were all gone, and I was like, oh wow, what? And so I went up to bed, and then I woke up at like 11 on the Sunday. This is a Saturday party. Sunday morning, I wake up at like 11 in the afternoon, and I'm like, I have been out for like 12 hours or whatever it is. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, what was that? And so I just happened to and I've learned now, based on strains and stuff, he just had the right strain. It wasn't like a more,
and you'd never done it before.
I didn't know, and I'd never done it before.
Your body went
so it was it just knocked me right out, and I was like, I want more of that. And that's when I became like really the midnight toker. I just one hit at night to go to bed. That's it. I can't smoke during the day. I can't get fuzzy, or I can't get stoned or anything.
Right.
I work all day. I do my thing, but at night, and it helps me go to sleep. It's medicinal. And when I didn't smoke, and back in the early days, I'd be like, medicinal marijuana, we don't use the M word anymore, but medicinal marijuana back in the day. And I would, wink, wink. Yeah, it's my medicine. I've learned so much, and I've come so far now that realizing that no, it really is medicine. There are over 400 compounds, and you were talking about things like chamomile, talk about things like lavender. All right. So we get lavender, we use essential oils and stuff. Right. You have a child, you'll spray chamomile or spray lavender on their pillow to help them go to sleep.
To help them sleep.
Right. The reason is there's a compound in flowers and in different things called terpenes. Okay. And linalool is the terpene that's prevalent in lavender. Okay, so when you smell and that relaxing effect from lavender is from a terpene called linalool. Linalool is naturally occurring in cannabis. It's one of many terpenes. There's also pinene, so pine tree scent. When you if you get people who have a fake Christmas tree and then they spray like a pine scent or candles, that's pinene. Lemon zest, it's limonene. These actually all occur naturally in cannabis. So when you have all these different strains, and it's like, oh, this is kind of citrusy. This is like a blueberry. This is like a, bakery smell, cinnamon, cloves. Cloves is eugenol, I believe. And those effects that you get, the relaxation or pain relief or whatever it is, anti-anxiety, that comes from those compounds occur in cannabis. So that's when you start talking about the medicinal, and then you find out that everyone focuses on the THC, which gets you psychoactive and gets you stoned.
Right.
But the CBD, we're all learning now. You see CBDs everywhere.
I use CBD lotion on my feet.
Absolutely. It's a great analgesic. It's a great pain relief, anti-inflammatory. So then the body can heal itself, reduce the inflammation, let it heal itself. I had shoulder pain. And I used a CBD lotion. I thought I was going to have surgery, and I went to see the doctor, and I just used a CBD cream, and about 3 months later, done.
Right.
No surgery, because it relieves the pain, which is what I noticed, but then it's anti-inflammatory and let the body heal itself.
Right.
And so that's why now we talk about medicinal marijuana or cannabis, that it really is medicine. We're finding that in a petri dish, it kills cancer, certain cancerous cells. It does all kinds of stuff. So obviously Epidiolex, for epilepsy, it is, we call it kind of a miracle plant, because of the way it interacts with your endocannabinoid system that we're all built with.
Well, and it's one of those things that as we said, has been around forever, and before we civilized things, people use things like this all the time, and obviously still do. And Eastern medicine obviously tends to use a lot, and all of these various things. And then we got got our knickers in a knot and went, oh, we can't do that. And we've done that with lots of things. Alcohol, nicotine is probably, those two are probably the biggest things. And it's and I want to point out again, cannabis is legal in all 50 states. There's lots of things that vary in that. And before the program we were talking about, it might be legal in the state but not in your county, and so that gets a little wonkadoodle, and and so you need to research some of that stuff. But it is one of those things that has so many good benefits, but it's like a lot of things like that, it's expensive, and so if you can grow your own, make your own wine, all of those things, you do tend to save money.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a big thing behind the Armoire. So why the Armoire? There are several reasons,
and it looks like an armoire, folks. You open it up, the plant's inside. It's got these pretty doors that swing shut.
There for those who
very pretty piece of furniture that's growing your whatever you're growing in there.
Totally discreet. So the first thing is it's totally discreet. It looks like furniture. It's discreet.
Your neighbors aren't going to call the cops on you.
Flies under radar. Most people just have them in their living room. You're not going to put grow tents or open pots in the middle of your living room. And the smell and the sound and noise and all that stuff. So this is a box that's quiet, no smell, looks discreet. You can just stick it in a corner. And that's the first thing. The second thing is 95% of our customers have never grown before. What's different is it's not just hardware. This isn't just a different kind of tent or something. We've actually engineered from the ground up our own grow protocol. That dumbs it down to just water it once a day like a house plant. It's not super complicated. So it makes it so that everybody and anybody, you will be successful. And then we've layered on our, we think it's an industry first, concierge support team, our concierge service. So we will handhold you and walk you through this. Usually when you're buying equipment, you go to a hydro store, or you buy online through Amazon or whatever, and you buy a tent. Then you got to figure out MacGyver it all together. You got to buy a light, you got to buy fans, you got to buy all the pieces and stuff and put it together. Did I get the right light? Did I get the right this? And how does this all work together? And then you buy all this equipment, and then you're on your own to figure out how it all works.
Right.
The equipment is sold like cars. You go to Toyota, you buy a car. They assume you know how to drive.
Right. It's put together.
It's just assembled. Here you go. And you're just buying hardware. You're on, learning to drive. You do that on your own. Okay. And that's how tents and other grow equipment is usually sold. That's not how we sell the Armoire. The Armoire is, it comes with a concierge service. We're here to help you. We'll jump on calls. We'll jump on a Zoom call. We'll walk you through. We'll look at, do it with video now and Zoom calls. We can, show us your plant. We can say, oh, here's what you need to, we're there to help you with your grow. You will be successful. So we've made it simple. We made it small and compact, manageable. This is a one plant system, and we get very large yields. We get outsized results from this. And in one plant, we average 4 ounces, a quarter pound, every 60 days, on average. But we have people pulling 7 and 8, like double that, 7 and 8 ounces pretty regularly. That's a lot. And just to put in perspective, like in Massachusetts, street price is around $320 an ounce. Imagine getting 7 ounces. That's $2,000 worth of street price.
Right. And so, you're taking out the middle men because it's multiple people. And, more importantly, what went into it. I shared with you before the program that in 2015, I was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And luckily, I didn't have, because I kind of skipped over it and about died. I didn't have the issues with nausea and things like that. Right. But, I asked my oncologist because it can be prescribed for medical reasons here in Georgia. Georgia is one of the last states that's still, kind of drawn the line on stuff. And so I asked my oncologist, I said, just out of curiosity. And she said, in very rare cases, they will prescribe. And they said extreme nausea and pain that's not being touched by anything else. And they said, but otherwise, no. They, as a practice, decided not to. And I said, well, I'm just curious why.
And what year was this, by the way?
Pardon me?
And what year was this? Just so I know.
Like last year.
Oh, okay. Okay. So good.
Recent.
Yep. Okay.
And so I said, because Georgia really hasn't, it's only been a couple years, I think, since Georgia has said, okay. And there's still a lot, like you can't grow it here. So you can get it, but you can't get it. I mean, it's very strange. It's like I said, it's one of the states that's kind of still dragging its feet. But so I asked her, I said, so why won't you prescribe it? Because you are legally able to. And she said, it's because, first of all, even when you're going to a dispensary, when you're going to places that you trust, you still don't know exactly what you're getting. She said, it's all these different, and she said, and so then we don't know how it's going to interact with some of the drugs you're already taking, whether it's chemotherapy, whether it's whatever. And she said, we just don't want to take that risk with our patients. Obviously, if you're doing it yourself, you've got a much better idea as to what's going into it.
That's a big selling point as well. That there's it's just like with your tomatoes, right? GMO type tomatoes.
Right. Yeah. What pesticides did you put on them or not put on them?
They're spraying them with pesticides, and now it may be legal pesticides that the FDA has decided is within a reasonable, safe tolerance range and all that stuff, and they're making these decisions. But it's but they're they're GMO seeds, they're blah 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 blah. And they're spraying with pesticides and PGRs. That's the big thing. People know about pesticides. They don't know about PGRs. Those are plant growth regulators. If you ever walk into a supermarket and you look at the tomatoes, every single one, they're exactly
right. Yeah. I'm like, how did they get all these to be exactly uniform?
Yeah. And that's a combination of the GMO, genetically modified seeds, and the PGRs are plant growth regulators. They're hormone regulators that they spray and to manage growth and consistency and so forth. And that's for the shelf appeal, if you will. And so like in Colorado, after they had been legal, after about a year being legal, they did statewide inspections, and they went in and they found that they grabbed from all the dispensaries, and they went and they tested, and 80% of everything they tested came back unclean for pesticides or heavy metals or et cetera, PGRs, et cetera, and sprays, and mold issues, et cetera. Like 80% of it came back with problems. And in California, they're all laughing at them because, the OGs, the old gangs out in California, they've been doing this forever, going, you new guys, Well, the following year they did it in California, it was 86%. 86%. So when you're growing it yourself, like I know I've been growing now for about 3 years, myself personally, and with the Armoire, and I know exactly what's gone into it. It's purified. I've got purified water, light, and organic soil.
Right.
It's not sprayed with anything. It's not given anything. I'm not, there's no chemicals, there's no sprays. But, when you have a commercial grow and it with a 2 million, 100,000 warehouse, 100,000 square foot warehouse crop, and, you got a $2 million crop here and you get spider mites, they're going to spray that.
Right. Otherwise you've lost your whole crop.
I'm not going to say, oopsies, oh, well, let's just start over. It's a $2 million crop, and we're 3 months into the 4 months of growing this thing. We're not just going to toss it and start over. They're going to spray it. They're going to find the legal pesticides, and they are going to spray it. So if you've got, like you said, cancer and things like that, where now you have compromised immune systems, or that you don't want to be putting that in. No. So that point I get, and that's where home grow is a huge boon.
Right.
So we have quite a few cancer patients with Armoires growing for themselves. And then we have a bunch of folks who, just because it's expensive, that they bought Armoires, and they've taken, like, one, it was between her and her husband, that medicinal, they were spending about $500 a month between the two of them, at a dispensary. She's like, this is nuts. This is too expensive. It was fine at first when they were both working, but then they retired. She goes, we're on a fixed income now, and this is like $6,000 a year for weed. It's too much.
Right. For things like pain mitigation and
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what it was. She had back pain and they couldn't operate, and it was just, I just have to live with this. She goes, I just have to live with it. So they bought an Armoire and went from $6,000 a year down to about $200 to $300 a year.
And again, they know the quality and things like that, and of course we live in a society here in the States where prescriptions and even over the counter medicines seems like the first thing that we turn to. Right. And whether, and especially for things like pain, and you start out at the Tylenol level and then you move up. And I remember when I was so sick, and I was in ICU, very, very ill. I had multiple complications. And it was, and they gave me Dilaudid. Oh, no, no. I was alert enough to know I did not like that. The walls moved. Freaked me out. I opened my eyes and the walls were moving, and I'm like, no. And then they tried something else, same thing. My system said, no, we don't like this. And so I ended up on morphine. And actually, amazingly enough, morphine worked really pretty well for me. But yeah, I mean, they were just, let's throw drug after it. Right. And like on other things, I have some chronic pain issues. And when I was in Colorado, I went to an acupuncturist. That did wonders, and I remember my acupuncturist saying, it might not work, but we're not going to make things worse. Right. And, and yes, folks, for everybody who says, but we know that there are times where something happens, you go to a chiropractor and something happens. I mean, but those are rare, extreme, circumstances. Right. I love my acupuncturist. I come here to Georgia, I ask about acupuncture, and everybody makes faces. It's just not something that they do here. And so it's, but especially being a cancer patient, I find it so interesting to see that, some places embrace the thought of, what can we do to help? Period. Not, hey, let's do, it's okay, let's do and so they're saying, let's do a combination of Eastern, Western, traditional, non-traditional, all of those various things. And to me, that's the best thing that you can possibly do, because then you're going to find what works for you, as opposed to let's throw a pill at it, let's cut it off, do whatever. And, and do those things. And again, if you're controlling this yourself, that's the important thing.
Right, absolutely. And we talked earlier about all these like 400 compounds and all these molecules. So we all know about the THC, that's what gets you stoned. And CBD, a lot of people know about CBD. Then there's CBN. CBN makes you very sleepy. So that's great for insomnia. And this is where all these strains, we've got Granddaddy Perp and Durban Poison and lemon haze and all these different strains. Well, what that is because you have 400 compounds, and a particular strain, you could have different combination, like high in this, but lower in that. So you have, with 400 compounds, you have almost an infinite number of permutations, and that's where all the strains come from. So you can find that I like Gorilla Glue for my insomnia, but you wouldn't want that if you are using cannabis for anxiety.
Right.
And you don't want something that's going to knock you out and put you to sleep. You're doing it during the day when you're awake. Then you want something that's uplifting, not sleep, something like no CBN in it. Another molecule, they call it the mother molecule. It's CBG. And you're going to, these minor cannabinoids are really coming on strong now. And you're starting to hear a lot more of this. CBD was the first, but you're going to hear CBG. They call it the mother molecule. It's that when the plant is developing, it's mostly CBG. And then what happens is over time, as the plant develops, the CBG turns into CBD, THC, turns into these other compounds. But it's kind of like almost like stem cells. CBG is sort of like the equivalent of stem cells for cannabinoids. And they find that it kills cancer in a petri dish, at least certain kinds of cancers. And so what kills me is that this war on drugs from the 70s, that now with legalization, things are opening up, and now doctors and scientists are starting to do research, and they're finding all this at a really fast pace. They're learning all these things, that this is almost a miracle plant and all these things that it can do. They find CBG will actually kill antibiotic resistant bacteria.
Ooh.
So MRSA,
VRE. That's me.
So you get these bacteria, and now all the normal antibiotic, penicillin and whatever, won't what do we do? Resistant.
And you talk about money. Yeah. Oh my gosh. When I was, I got a major infection. Actually, I've had several ones. And so they said, okay, we're going to give you the mother of all antibiotics. It took really special permission from my insurance company. I took these pills 4 times a day. Each pill was $1,000. $4,000 a day. I mean, I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. And then of course, what happens? I got an allergic reaction to them. And so I had this whole big thing that I could not take. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a lot of money sitting there.
Yeah, right.
But but I think part of this is because every time we've turned around, we sneeze, we take a drug. We sneeze, we take it. And so we've built that up in our bodies. And then when you add in that all these antibiotics are on our foods, all these various things, it's no wonder that, our bodies are going, wait a minute, we don't like this.
So the thing I was to finish my thought, it kills me now looking at how much we're learning, how fast, now that we're doing this research and we're realizing that CBG, it could solve the antibiotic resistant problems, because people are freaking out over that. What are we going to do? Here's another weapon, and another arrow in our quiver now. Right. And the cancer and just on and on and on, and all these things that you can treat and with the compounds within cannabis. Can you imagine if we hadn't done this back in the 70s and we had 40 years of research,
and actually,
where we would be today? Where, and the pain and the suffering and everything else that where would we be today if we had 40 years of research? It's like we've just we derailed ourselves by 40 years.
Well, and of course, back in the 70s, the problem was the overuse of things for the most part. And if you drink too much water, you can die. I mean, as you take a drink of whatever that is. Sorry about that. But yeah, it is one of those things where anything in an extreme is not healthy. And so if you are taking drugs and
everything in moderation, sure.
right. Yeah. Back in the 70s, it was, let's see how strong we can make things. And they are still doing that with THC. I mean, that is one of those things.
That is a potential issue. Yes.
Yeah. I have friends in Colorado who, are working very strongly, especially with kids, because THC and, if somehow someone under 18 is getting that, it's just going to wreak havoc with their brains.
Yeah. I told my kids, not until 22.
Mm-hmm.
Once
we need those little brain cells to get developed. And so, there's that. And of course, what's happened is we've hybridized things, is what happens with everything else. It does get stronger and stronger. I was out in California last week and we were in wine country. And so seeing everything, all the greenhouse, all of that, I mean, it was just incredible. But I was talking with my cousin and she said, she had gone to a place for strawberries. And it was, this great place. She went to pick her own strawberries. These strawberries were, the gigantic things the size of your fist. They were bright red. They looked absolutely gorgeous and had zero flavor. Or it's like roses. When we have hybrid roses, they look pretty, but all of a sudden they have no aroma. And so, hybridization is, done some weird things to things.
Yeah. Over-engineered. Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, it's okay to have the really pretty roses, but I want my strawberries to taste like strawberries.
Yeah. Yeah. I am personally not a fan. I know it's popular, but I am not a fan of like dabbing concentrates. I'm not a fan of concentrates personally.
Yeah. Concentrate. And that is where you have problems with
too strong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's where you get a lot of people having issues, problems. And I think that, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of the strong concentrates.
Well, and it's like everything, you need to educate yourself about it. And I know, like with my friend, one of the things that she talked about in Colorado was that they will pull up to, say, a place where there's a lot of kids with a trailer, an RV trailer. And on one side, the window opens and you've got the doctor. And you go up and you tell the doctor, my head hurts, my back hurts, and you get the card. And you trot around to the other side of the trailer and you hand them the card and you get the medicine. That's not a good thing. And so, that's, but let's go back to, any of these things as they've come along, alcohol, all of those things, they've had issues that have had to work themselves
out. To be worked out. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm an old fashioned flower guy, because you also build up tolerance. If you do those really strong concentrates, then all of a sudden it's now that's the new bar. It's like, I'm an old school. I just I grow my plants. I grow beautiful plants, very easy. I'm blown away by the results, and I just smoke my own.
Yeah. Well, and it is, you do need to think about, why are you doing it? And maybe have a discussion with your medical provider, and just, especially if you're taking other drugs. It was like I was saying with my oncologist. She said they did not know how it would interact with the other drugs that they're prescribing. And shoot, you get to be our age and you're taking something, but even at that, your vitamins can counteract each other, all of these various things. And so it's just good to have those discussions. And as I've told people, I'm sorry if my medical doctor isn't up for having some of those discussions. Maybe that's not the doctor I need to be with, because I am going to say, okay, I'm taking these supplements, all these various things. Now I don't take any cannabis products, but yeah, I do take other supplements, and they need to know that, just so that we make sure that there's not an issue.
Yep. I always I take a few vitamins and stuff. I always tell my doctor. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there's weird things. I remember it's some very common drug that is given quite a bit. And I honestly am drawing a blank on what it is, but grapefruit will cause an issue with it. And, it's like, what? And so it's always good to, if, and maybe not have the conversation with your doctor, but do research on good sites, folks. Dr. Google can get a little carried away. And so make sure when you're researching that, what information you're getting is good information about all of this. Because you do want to there's a lot of misinformation out there. And you want to make sure that you're not harming yourself or those that you love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we are we've got the Armoire we've been talking about quite a bit.
Right. And then you've got all sorts of other cool products.
We have a whole catalog of about 300 SKUs of rolling trays, storage boxes, grinders, et cetera, that we sell on our website, but especially to smoke shops, head shops, and dispensaries. So you go into stores and you can find our products in stores under our Green Goddess Supply label. And it's all part of a whole ecosystem that we're basically trying to help people go from cultivation right through to consumption. Help grow it, then store it, grind it, roll it, consume it.
And again, it's about doing it the right way.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And our focus is on a higher quality product. We are a brand. These are our products. We're not a distributor. So for us, it's all about high quality products. I've got a cat now that all of a sudden became excited.
I know. We just saw the cat. I love these videos. You gotta love Zoom now because things happen, and we're like, okay, whatever. My husband's out mowing the lawn, so we've probably heard that on the thing. But these things happen. But yeah, it's I think one of the cool things about what you've done is you have done what every entrepreneur wants to do. You have taken a passion and turned it into a business. And I just love that concept.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was one of the things where we were really good and we did a good quality job in the service business. But I think that's where I was feeling burnt out because you talk about the passion and this, I've got that passion. I felt that reignited. We are on a mission here. We're on a mission to empower everybody and anybody to be able to grow their own clean herbs at home themselves quickly, easily, discreetly, and inexpensively. That's our mission.
Right.
We're here and we are changing lives. And it's really fulfilling to see people saying, yeah, I had pain, I had this, I had that, but I couldn't afford it. I was going to the dispensary. It was $500 a month and I just can't afford that anymore. So now I'm just dealing and I'm living in pain and whatever. But I was able to get this box. I can grow it myself now for like $20 instead of, I can get $2,000 worth of grain for, flour for like $20. He said, now I can afford that. My life is so much better. People who are growing it, we get a lot of people who are growing it for other people. There's quite a few of our customers where they've got a box and they're growing it for their brother. Brother has cancer, for the nausea, to help with the nausea. The chemotherapy is miserable, so it's quality of life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's to us, it's like, okay, we're not just building some website for some corporate. I mean, we did like a lot of nice stuff, with like Bacardi for we did Elvis.com back in the day, the official Elvis Presley website. Yeah. So, I mean, that was kind of cool and okay, but I mean, we're just building stuff for corporate, now this is like, we can see the impact. We're helping people, we're changing lives. And that's energizing for us. And that's exciting for us.
Right. I always like to know from entrepreneurs, how big is your team? I mean, because it's obviously more than just you now. So how much have you grown the business?
Yep. So we are, we're still small. There's roughly around 5 of us right now. Although we're expanding, we're going to be adding a couple more. So we're starting to expand. But what happened was it went from this little side thing while I was running my agency, and that was like 2 or 3. We've been around for 6 going on 7 years now. But like the first 3 or 4 years, it was a side thing as I was, playing around.
That good old side gig that so many people have.
Right. And then finally it was like, hey, there's something going on here. This is interesting, And then when Vincent came in with the Armoire, like, okay, wait a second, let's do this. Let's go for this. And so then at that point, we might have been 3 years into it and we had a small catalog with a bunch of products and so forth. And, but they were all on the accessory side. Then we added the Armoire. That's like the crown jewel in our product line. And that's really our mission. That's when we're like, yeah, we've got to do this. That's where the mission came in. And so then from then till now, that's been about 3 years where we've just been going through, we had to go through pre-production. We patented it. It's a patent and we've been granted, we've got a patent on this. But that whole process, that took like 2 years to get the patent.
Because that was in the middle of COVID too. So that was just always, hey, there's the cat.
That's reaching over from the top. she's sitting behind the laptop here, and she just keeps looking over. But
for anybody who's not watching, this cat just kind of keeps appearing.
Yeah, it just keeps peering down from the top. But so we spent 3 years. We had to go through prototyping, make sure we could actually build these things, working with a factory to build these for us.
Right.
And then
because you wanted good quality. I mean,
prototyping, beta testing.
You can't be selling something that helps people have good quality and have it not be good quality.
Right. And also the fact that this is a brand new thing we invented. It's not like let's just go to the, Armoire grow cabinet people to have them make this for us. It's like, this doesn't exist. We had like, here's how we build them. Here's how it needs to work. And we had to source all the parts and put all this together, make sure we could fabricate these in an assembly line kind of fashion. Like we can bang out these things. And then you don't want to do a million of them and find out they're all wrong. So it's like, all right, let's just do a limited run of like a dozen of these and then get them and then look at it and test them. And yep, those are good. Okay, we can sell those through. Now let's go build, and again, and then in steps. Now I don't want to, all right, good. Now do 1,000. And then, so it's like scaling it up. All right, now go do 50. Right. Okay. That worked. Okay. Now do 100. Okay. Now do 200 of them. And we're scaling that up. And then we have to, that's not only building it, but then we also have to be able to market them, sell them and the fulfillment. And so it's taken us 3 years working through that whole process where everything is humming and flowing and we're building product and shipping now. And in that time, marketing it, we've been winning awards and getting a lot of recognition, and that's all been going well.
Cool, I love it.
So it's been a process. It's been a process. So we're just about a half a dozen people, like five people right now.
And I think that's the lesson for entrepreneurs is there's really nothing that is a get rich quick scheme. It takes trial and error. It takes figuring out, does the market even want this? Things like that. And so I think that's a great lesson.
Yeah, product market fit and all of that.
Yeah. Well, oh my gosh, Eric, we have just a couple minutes left. So tell people how they find your website.
Absolutely. So our website is www.greengoddesssupply.com. Just
easy peasy.
Easy peasy. You will have 3 S's in a row. There's 2 from Goddess and 1 for supply. So, and then it's the same on social. If you go to Facebook or facebook.com/greengoddesssupply, get to our page on Facebook. And Instagram, we're real big on Instagram. So on Instagram, @greengoddesssupply on Instagram.
Cool. I love it. And if somebody wants to reach out to you personally?
I'm just Eric, ERIC @greengoddesssupply.com. Very straightforward.
Perfect. I love it. Well, this really has been fascinating, especially because in some of this, I'm a little naive, but I do understand how important it is. I mean, that's the thing. And it's always fun talking with another entrepreneur about how you built your business.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the business of cannabis. This is not, it's not just stoner like cool.
Right.
This is the business.
Yeah, It's not. Shall we? Dare we say it's not your grandma's pot?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's one of the fastest growing industries in U.S. history.
Most definitely. Well, do you have any final thoughts for us?
Sure, I do. My final thought is I would say this. We believe deeply that medicine shouldn't just be for those who can afford it. And that's why we ask everybody to help make sure to push for home grow provisions in your state. When your state legalizes, home grow is really important. That it shouldn't just be for those who can afford it. We're here to democratize the plant.
I love it. Well, this has been such a fun discussion, and I can't wait to chat with you again because this, as you said, this is something that is growing rapidly. So I'm sure there's going to be part 2 of this that we want to talk about.
I'd love to come back.
Right. Well, I am Deb Creer. I've been having this very fascinating discussion with Eric Robichaud. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.